Sunumumuza başlamadan önce Eteration hakkında da kısa bir bilgi vermek isterim. Eteration olarak AI destekli geliştirme araçları, bulut tabanlı mimari ve sektör bilgisayarı yeni nesil dijital hizmetleri 2002 yılından beri sunan bir yazılım geliştirme şirketiyiz. Burada teknoloji alanında bulut, mikroservisler ve dijital dönüşüm konularında uzmanız. Mobil ve web dünyası içinde dijital projeler geliştiriyoruz, entegrasyon çözümleri sunuyoruz, e-ticaret platformunu inşa ediyoruz ve DevOps süreçlerinde de destek veriyoruz. Bu hizmetleri de proje yönetim ofisimizin ecel yaklaşımıyla destekliyoruz. Akademi bünyemizde de odaklanmış kurumlara özel eğitimler var. Burada özetle Eteration olarak sadece yazılım geliştirmiyoruz aslında. Geleceğe hazır dijital sistemler inşa ediyoruz diyebilirim. Bugünkü webinarımızda öncelikle GitLab'den Sayın Senior Çözüm Mimarı Sayın Gautham ile geleneksel SDLC iş akışlarındaki sorunları, uygulama güvenliği araçlarının benimsenmesini ve yapay zekanın SDLC'yi nasıl geliştirdiğini İngilizce olarak ele alacağız. Ardından Eteration DevOps ekip liderimiz Yasin YILDIRIM ile GitLab entegrasyonlarındaki tecrübelerimizi, karşılaşılan zorlukları ve özel çözümlerimizi Türkçe olarak paylaşacağız. Daha sonrasında Gautham'ın yapay zeka destekli DevSecOps konulu canlı demosunu izliyor olacağız ve son olarak da sizlerden gelen soruları yanıtlayacağız. Sorularınız oldukça chat üzerinden yazabilirsiniz veya webinar sonrasında ise sesli olarak yine dile getirebilirsiniz diyeyim. Şu anda itibaren GitLab'den Senior Solution Architect Gautham ile beraberiz. Hello Gautham, how are you?
Merhaba Zeynep, merhabalar to everyone. Very good. How about yourself and everyone here in the call?
Yeah, I think we're also good. My first question is, what are some of the biggest pain points in traditional SDLC workflows and how do teams overcome them?
Thank you so much for the question. Let me first just put the presentation I have into slideshow mode and let's talk about it. So the question was, what are the biggest challenges in the traditional software development lifecycle? As GitLab, we work with a lot of different customers, and whenever I talk to my customers, I always see the following design pattern. When customers are moving towards adopting DevOps, they will start looking towards point solutions. So I need a source code management tool. I need a CI pipeline engine. I need a security tool. And they will continue adopting different tools over time to cover their requirements. What happens in the end, when they finally reach, I would say, something for maturity, they'll have between 7 to 10 different tools that they need to basically have as a mesh, and then they need to continuously maintain and integrate. In fact, the GitLab in 2023, we did a survey where we talked to 5,000 different customers. And they said that, at approximately 70% of 70% of developers within the organization, they sometimes spend up to a quarter of their time, 25% of the time, just having to manage these things. There's another challenge as well, which is context switching. It's when the developers have to move from one console to another console and they have to map all the information. It basically severely hampers their progress in terms of the work that they can do. And then the final point, we're coming to, I would say, the governance and compliance. There's a huge operational challenge because let's say that you have a specific standard, ISO 27001. When you want to apply that to your process, you need to go across to all the different tools and apply the different standards uniformly. So how do we as GitLab see this being overcome? GitLab started as also a point product solution, but in the last 3 to 4 years, we've actually gone towards having a platform approach where we natively provide the use cases, and we say about 80 to 90% of the use cases that a customer might have in software development. And it becomes the responsibility of the vendor, it becomes the responsibility of GitLab to make sure that these work and integrate natively and that they play nicely with each other. What is the advantage of this? Operationally, the number of tools that the customers have to work with decreases, and the time to manage those tools as well. Also, because you have a single data store, all the relevant information for the different teams is made available, and this decreases the context switching. And finally, if you would like to apply governance or even AI at a certain point, it's applied in a single location as opposed to basically having to go and work across different tools. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. Okay, what are the common issues you can see in the SDLC process in terms of the adoption of application security tools?
So that's the mixed part of this, right? So obviously we love to say that development is all about developers, but actually if you look at the process, it's involving many different teams. So if I was to look at the standard process, normally when you see developers doing the work, they will get the requirements for the business team. They will go ahead and create some code. They will maybe test their code. They'll get the approval from the relevant stakeholders, whether that's the team lead, the business analyst, and then they go ahead and they look for deployment. And normally at this final gate before they release or deploy to production, that's when the security team gets called and says, okay, now it's time for us to do a penetration test. If and when they find some issues, they will inform the developers with a big list of challenges that the developers have to go back and fix. I'm so sorry, my mouse is very sensitive. So this is very similar to imagining running a marathon, and you're running for 40 kilometers, and then you're just about to hit the finish line, and then someone tells you you had a false start, go back to the beginning and work again. And this is exactly how the developers would feel, because whatever work that they did 2-3 weeks ago, now they have to basically re-understand and basically update. So this is a huge frustration for developers and security when they have this challenge. Why? Because what's the step that the developers will do? They will try to avoid the security team. So they will basically go ahead and try to do things without involving security, and basically that leads to a compliance issue. What is the obvious solution? And sorry, before I move to the obvious solution, what is another challenge? Let's say that we do involve and include security earlier within the process. So we shift left and include it as part of that process. What is the other problem that comes is the ratio of security to developers. I know as a worldwide standard, and I used to work for cybersecurity companies, the ratio between developers and security is normally between 25-1. But sometimes I've seen it even in big organizations, it's 100-1. So imagine that you're including security scans and you're requiring security approvals from an application security engineer. He's going to be bombarded with requests looking at the difference in the ratio of developers to security. So how can he help, right? How does he stop becoming a bottleneck? That is another challenge as well. So how do we at GitLab see this thing being overcome? One is, as I told you about the platform approach, the idea of having the security tools natively available within the same platform. And those are covering, many different areas, whether it's static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, dependency management for when you're using open source tools, secret detection to make sure that you're not leaving any username passwords, container scanning in case you're using containers, and finally, license compliance or API security as such. So there are many different tools that we see our customers using constantly. And that's where GitLab has basically gone and said, we are going to go and include these as part of our platform. So we give them to you natively available. So that means it's very easy to, first of all, shift left. That's one part of it. But also because we're doing the native integration, that means that within the same console, the developer, when he is doing a merge request or a pull request, when he's doing the updates, you can see all the different engines, first of all, giving their output, as well as being able to give how to solve these issues. That means that the developer has direct feedback without having to wait for a security engineer, without having to map the challenges himself, so that he can go ahead and try and fix this. So that's one way that we help and include the compliance. The other side of it is, how do we alleviate the challenge on the security engineer? And that is through something called dynamic approvals and compliance. The idea being that you call in the security engineer only as and when you have a decrease in the quality of your code or a decrease in the security of your code. Meaning you have an implicit approval unless we find out through our security balancing scanners that there is a challenge. That decreases the overhead because now that security engineer does not need to check each and every change. He only needs to come in for the ones that have been highlighted. That's one part of it. And as a developer, you have two options now. You can either go ahead and fix the issue, recommit the code, and then remove the required dynamic approval, or you say that there is no way to get across it and you go ahead and talk to the security team so that you can jointly accept the risk. With these options, we've actually seen that this helps to decrease the friction between security and development, as well as make the flow seamless. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. In what ways is AI enhancing the SDLC, and how can teams practically use AI today?
Oh, yeah, this is a very common question. I'm sure everyone here also, either they will be thinking themselves or they will have their management asking this question. So, what I would say is, very, very easy and very common use case. I'm sure everyone who's a developer today is at some point, not even a developer, someone who's in tech or IT is going to use it, is the ability to use these AI assistants. And the first and most obvious way is obviously to become an additional coder. So that means that you're doing, in essence, pair programming. I'm a developer. I need to write a bit of code. I have someone sitting with me who can basically give me another set of eyes and another set of hands so that I can discuss ideas, I can request for structural code, and this basically increases the speed at which you do development. That's very much a very common answer that everyone will think of. But actually, as GitLab, again, because of the fact that we work with so many customers, we've actually identified where is the time spent by developers. And we identified that developers are only spending 25% of their time actually writing new code, whereas 75% of the time is spent on other tasks, like improving the security, improving the documentation, writing unit tests, or when they need help, in terms of onboarding additional tools. And so what GitLab did is understand that it's like a bottleneck. Imagine that, yes, you improve the amount of code that's been written. Does that actually improve your delivery of that code? If I was to think of it like an analogy, and I'm going to use something for Turkey, I have been many times to Istanbul, and I know the traffic over there. I would say that between the European and the Anatolian side, you have these bridges. Now, what is going to happen if, as a city, we decide to increase the size of the number of lanes of the bridge, but we don't actually increase any of the other roads? In the end, you're still going to have the same traffic problem. You're not going to be solving it because it's like a factory. The speed at which you deliver output is the speed of the slowest step in your process. And so that means we need to increase speed all across the board. And so that's exactly how GitLab looked at it. And we basically said we're going to do software development throughout the life cycle. Now, if I was to talk about the actual use cases, this is the same exact flow that I showed earlier from planning till delivery. But now with GitLab plugging in specific use cases across the entire software development lifecycle to improve the life of PMs, to improve the life of developers, to improve the life of DevOps or tools or operational engineers, as well as improve the life of security engineers. And finally, give an overall view to management on how effective the adoption of AI has been and how has it helped our DevOps process using some dashboards. I'm obviously going to talk very quickly on these, but I will also be showcasing these later on in the demo. So the first aspect I would say is what covers it globally is our GitLab Duo chat. This is basically a chatbot that's available within our system and that can help you at any point in time and where you can ask any questions, because GitLab has complete information about itself, has information about your code, and has information about good design practices or coding practices. The other part of it is, when you talk about planning or PMs, project managers, when they finally go ahead and give items to the developers, sometimes they need to understand what is happening. And so that's where we have our summarization use case. We're able to look at what is the work that needs to be done and simplify to developers in within 5-6 different points. And that means that he can quickly get started in terms of doing the work. Once he's actually doing the work, and that's where we're going to go inside his IDE. We're going to connect to the IDE. We're going to help write code. We're going to help explain code. We're going to help refactor code. We're going to help even write unit tests for those code. That means that the tasks that a developer normally does as part of building code, we are speeding him up at each and every step. And then once he's done committing the code, we actually even give reviews of the code. We even troubleshoot in case the pipelines that are running to go ahead and build and deploy this code fail. So that means that at no step is the developer or the user stuck waiting for someone else to come and help him. We can basically remove any roadblocks in this process, whether it's operationally because of a pipeline failing, or whether it's from a security perspective because of security vulnerability has been identified and that needs to be fixed. And finally, management then can have an oversight. How is it looking and working over the last few months, few days since we've been adopting these technologies? I hope that answers my question. Thank you, Zainab.
Gautham, thank you so much for all of this valuable information. Şimdi de GitLab tarafındaki tecrübelerimizi, karşılaştığımız zorlukları ve özel çözümlerimizi Yasin bizlerle paylaşıyor olacak. Merhaba Yasin, hoş geldin öncelikle. Mikrofonun kapalı maalesef. Yes.
Merhabalar Zeynep, hoş buldum. Herkese de hoş geldiniz diyorum.
Çalışma olarak farklı sektörlerde birçok GitLab entegrasyonu gerçekleştirdik. Bu projelerde müşterilerin en çok hangi ihtiyaçlarına odaklandık ve GitLab'in hangi özellikleri şu anda bu ihtiyaçlara en etkili şekilde çözüm sunuyor?
Çok teşekkür ederim Zeynep. Soru için de şöyle söyleyeyim, chat'e yazmaya devam edebilirsiniz. Webinar sonunda hepsini toplu cevaplandıracağız. Tekrar soruna dönecek olursam, biz Eteration olarak finans, üretim, perakende ve kamu gibi birçok sektörde GitLab entegrasyonları yaptık, yapmaya devam ediyoruz. Bu projelerde en çok karşılaştığımız ihtiyaç yazılım ekiplerinin zamanla farklı araçlarla çalışmaya başlamasından kaynaklanan bir dağınıklığın toparlanmasıydı. Az önce Gautam'ın da ilk soruda bahsettiği gibi orada bir tool chain sprawl var, bir karışıklık var. Birden fazla tool kullanılıyor. Yani mesela bir firma GitLab kullanıyor. Pipeline'ler, CI/CD süreçleri için Jenkins ve Argo kullanıyor. Güvenlik için SonarQube veya başka bir araç kullanıyor. Monitoring için ELK, Prometheus grafına bambaşka bir sistem kurmuş. Bu yapı hem yönetimi zorlaştırıyor hem de ekipler arasında kopukluk yaratıyor. Genelde müşterilerimiz bize şu şekilde bu soruyla geliyor daha doğrusu. Tüm süreci tek bir yerden yönetmek istiyorum. Nasıl yapabilirim? İşte GitLab burada devreye giriyor. Çünkü tek platform üzerinden hem geliştirme, hem CI/CD, hem güvenlik, hem de izleme adımlarını yönetebiliyoruz. Bu sayede entegrasyon süreçlerini sadeleştirebiliyoruz. Müşterilerimiz de bu geçişle beraber ciddi zaman ve operasyonel yükte azalma elde etmiş oluyor. Örnek veriyorum, bir müşterimizde daha önce 5 farklı araçla yönetilen süreci GitLab'e taşıdık ve kodun son kullanıcıya teslimi süresinde saatlerden dakikalara indirdik. Ayrıca pipeline içine entegre ettiğimiz güvenlik taramaları sayesinde önceden production'a kadar fark edilmeyen açıklar artık çok daha erken fark edilebilir hale geldi ve yakalanabildi, çözümlenebildi. Bir diğer önemli konu ise standartlaşma. GitLab'in şablon yapıları sayesinde ekipler aynı güvenli yapıyı tekrar tekrar kurabiliyorlar. Bu da özellikle büyük yapılarda sürdürülebilirliği arttırıyor. Bir pipeline'in öbüründen farklılaşmamasını, aynı temel çizgi üzerinde gidebilmesini sağlıyor. Son olarak GitLab'ın sağladığı tekil görünüm sayesinde herkes süreci baştan sona kadar takip edebiliyorlar. Ne zaman ne değişti, nerede patladı, hangi açık tespit edildi, bu bilgilerin hepsi tek ekranda görülebiliyor. Özetle müşterilerimizin ihtiyaç duyduğu hız, güvenlik ve sade altyapı GitLab'in sunduğu entegre platform yapısıyla birebir örtüşüyor.
Teşekkür ederiz Yasin. Peki GitLab platformunu müşterilerimizin entegre ederken en sık karşılaştığımız zorluklar neler oluyor? Yani mesela bu süreçleri nasıl yönetiyoruz ve nasıl çözüme kavuşturuyoruz?
Teşekkür ederim. Burada yani aslında genelde 3 tane ana zorlukla karşılaşıyoruz. Birinci olarak mevcut yapının yeni GitLab'e taşınması, yani kurulan GitLab'e. 2, alışkanlıkların değişmesi. 3, DevSecOps kültürüne adaptasyon. İlk olarak müşteriler çoğu zaman birden fazla aracı yıllardır kullanmaktan bahsetmiştim. Mesela Jenkins, Bitbucket, SonarQube gibi örneklere verdik. Burada belli bir düzen kurulmuş ama zamanla bu sistemler karmaşıklaşıyor ve bakımı zorlaşıyor. Biz bu noktada önce mevcut yapıyı analiz edip kesintisiz bir geçiş planı çıkarıyoruz. Genellikle eski ve yeni sistem bir süre paralel çalıştırıyoruz. Böylece GitLab tarafını test edip ekiplere alışma süreci tanımış oluyoruz. İkinci zorluk teknik değil, daha çok kültürel. Ekipler yeni bir araca geçerken çekingen davranabiliyorlar. İşte niye değiştiriyoruz? Eski sistem kötü müydü? Bu sorular çok fazla geliyor. Bu durumda sadece teknik destek vermek yetmiyor açıkçası. Aynı zamanda eğitim ve iç iletişimi de yönetmek zorunda kalıyoruz. Ve bunları da gayet başarılı bir şekilde yönetebiliyoruz müşterimiz adına. GitLab'e özel kısa eğitimler yapıyoruz. Pilot takımlarla başlama gibi entegrasyonu kolaylaştıran, daha yumuşak hale getiren yöntemlerle devam ediyoruz. Üçüncü konu ise DevSecOps. Güvenliği yazılım sürecine entegre etmek hala birçok ekip için çok yeni bir yaklaşım. Güvenlik taramaları süreci yavaşlatır gibi bir algı var. Ama doğru konfigürasyonla aslında işler gayet hızlanabiliyor. GitLab'de SAS, Dust gibi taramaları doğrudan pipeline'e entegre ediyoruz. Böylece geliştiriciler kodu yazarken olası güvenlik açıklarını anında görebiliyorlar. Yine Gautham az önce de bahsetti, demoda da göreceksiniz. Direkt olarak yazılım geliştirme süreçlerinde bu açıkları tespit ettiğiniz için hızlıca önlem alabiliyorsunuz. Örnek veriyorum, geçtiğimiz aylarda bir müşterimizle 60'tan fazla pipeline'ı GitLab'e taşıdık. Başka bir üründen muadili. Başta ciddi çekinceler vardı ama işin sonunda gördüler ki manuel olarak yaptıkları işlerin neredeyse tamamı otomasyona geçmiş ve sistem çok daha stabil hale gelmiş. Özetle buradan yola çıkacak olursam, yani biz bu işi sadece bir araç geçişi olarak değil, kapsamlı bir dönüşüm süreci olarak ele alıyoruz. İşte teknik geçişini, kültürel adaptasyonu ve eğitimini hepsini bir arada yürütüyoruz.
Teşekkür ederim Yasin. Peki GitLab özel geliştirdiğimiz Eteration'da veya optimize ettiğimiz çözümler var mı? Ve bu çözümler hangi zorlukları adresliyor?
Tabii özellikle büyük kurumlarla çalıştığımız projelerde GitLab'e özel birçok çözüm geliştirdik. Bunların amacı hem kurumları hızlandırmak, hem güvenliği otomatize etmek, hem de süreci daha yönetilebilir hale getirmek. Örneğin sektöre ve yazılım dillerine özel CI/CD şablonları oluşturuyoruz. Bankacılık gibi sıkı regülasyonlara sahip sektörlerde loglama, versiyonlama, auditlerin tutulması, güvenlik kontrolleri gibi ihtiyaçları önceden tanımlı olarak pipeline içerisine yerleştiriyoruz. Böylece yeni bir proje açıldığında ekipler sıfırdan uğraşmak zorunda kalmıyor. Her şey hazır halde önlerine geliyor. Bir diğer çözümümüz GitLab Runner yönetimiyle ilgili olabiliyor. Örnek vermek gerekirse. İşte bazı müşterilerimizde birden fazla runner ihtiyacı doğabiliyor. Biz bu runner'ların CPU ve RAM kullanımına göre ölçeklendiği sistemi kurabiliyoruz. Kubernetes, Cloud veya Bare Metal fark etmeksizin istediğimiz sunucular üzerinde çalıştırarak hem maliyetleri düşürüyor hem de performans sorularını engelliyoruz. Çünkü ayrı orada bir yapı kurabiliyoruz buna özel. Ek olarak düzenli ve otomatize bir şekilde GitLab komponentlerinin backup'larını almak suretiyle sistemin disaster recovery yapısını oluşturuyoruz. Çok kısa sürelerde backup'tan dönüşü sağlayabiliyoruz. Ayrıca GitLab'in yetkilendirme tarafını da ihtiyaca göre optimize ediyoruz. İşte yeni bir kullanıcı geldiğinde hangi yetkilere ihtiyacı varsa atanıyor, gereksiz yetkilendirmeler engelleniyor gibi düşünebilirsiniz. Son olarak GitLab Duo gibi AI tabanlı özellikleri de bu çözümlere entegre etmeye başladık. Özellikle pipeline yazımında AI önerileri ve otomatik kod incelemeleri ciddi zaman kazandırıyor. Müşterilerimiz saatlerce sürecek kodu Duo sayesinde dakikalar içinde tamamlayabiliyor. Yani özet geçecek olursam biz sadece GitLab'ı kurmuyoruz. Müşterinin sektörüne, iş yapısına, ekiplerine göre özel çözümlerle bu platformu en verimli hale getiriyoruz. Bu da onları sadece bir araç değil, kapsamlı bir çözüm sahibi yapıyor.
Çok teşekkür ederim Yasin cevapların için.
Rica ederim.
Şimdi Gautham'ın gerçekleştireceği canlı demosunu izlemek üzere Gautham'a sözü devredeceğim. Hi Gautham. Now it's time for you to show us your live demo.
Great. Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you, Yasin, for explaining how iteration and GitLab work together. So now it's time, and you can please do let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, great. So I'm ending up on the last slide, which was talking about the use cases and the flow. I'm actually going to be doing the demo based on this. So I'm going to take us through a project where we're going to see how the project looks, and then we're going to get a request to do a change, and then the flow of how we would go through that change we're going to actually be showcasing that within a single platform while having AI capabilities added onto that platform. All right. So this is the GitLab console. I just want to let you know you can have this same console on-premise or on the cloud. We offer you both options. So according to your data residency, you have the ability to do whichever side you would like whichever deployment you would like. What I have here is actually a very simple application. It's a, I can say a hello world or welcome application in Node.js. But GitLab actually tells me, and you can see over here on the side, I have the ability to take on the roles of different profiles, whether I'm a developer, whether I'm a planner, whether I'm a DevOps engineer who works on pipelines, whether I'm a security engineer, or I'm actually someone who's responsible for deployment and operations. And finally, of course, management with analytics. So let's talk about my environment. I actually, if I can go back to my environment, I can see where is my application being deployed. So it actually gives me information where I can click and go inside, or I could also go ahead and see the application. You can see over here, it says it's a very simple, hello, welcome to application. And now let's remove and change our hat. We're now going to become a product manager or a business analyst. We are going to have some sort of request or requirement from our customers. I have many different type of requirements I can list. One example here is to implement user authentication, or another option is change the background color of the website. Let's go and quickly showcase this one. So we have the description, we have the requirements, we have the acceptance criteria, and additional resources. You can just think of it that someone has reported it to be very simplistic based on research, etc. We need to change it, and the designs are actually added. I can go ahead and have a discussion back and forth between the different teams. I can talk and apply weights. I can apply information on which milestone or which sprint this is part of. I can say the estimates on how much time it will take and how much time was spent. And then finally, once we're done with all of this, we go ahead and assign it to a developer. So you can think of it that obviously I'm doing the demo singularly, but now it's time from the PM to hand over to the developer. What can the developer do in this sense? I can go ahead and, of course, get some information on this. Now, this is a very simplistic project. Let me show you the art of what is possible with GitLab. So for this, I'm going to actually a GitLab issue itself that was created a long time ago with a lot of discussion points that have been added. So there's the main code itself, main discussion, but then we have many linked items. So you can have linked issues as part of this, as well as all the comments and discussion that has happened over the last X number of years or months. So imagine being a developer and getting assigned this, and you have to start as soon as possible. How does GitLab help you? GitLab helps you by either summarizing all of these comments or giving you the ability to ask questions about it. And this is where the chat comes in. I can ask, what are the agreed next steps in this issue? When I do that, basically GitLab calls our AI engine, understands the full context of whatever has happened in this issue and the linked issues, and then comes back to you with a response so that you know what needs to be done. An example of this is, it's been marked as a duplicate of a more comprehensive issue. So actually, I can even go ahead and look at that issue that gives a more general solution. GitLab team is working on a universal solution. The team has already implemented a feature. There are 2 epics that are addressing the fine-grained permission. So this is something about permissions. And then the core issue is to have more access. So as a developer, instead of having to spend X amount of time, I click the button and I got a quick summary of exactly what needs to be done, right? So that is one way in which we're speeding up the developers' life or making it easier. Now, let's go back to our original issue where we had to change the background. Normally, as a developer, when you want to do any change, you will go and create a branch. You will go and basically create a merge request or a pull request, which is basically my own world, my own copy of the code. So I'm taking from the master branch, and I'm basically going ahead and taking a copy of it, and where I'm going to be doing the work. Now, at the time being, I'm going to keep the information very simple. So I'm just not putting a description. I could obviously write a description, but I'm going to showcase this for later. It does take a bit of the information from the issue itself. So the labels are applied, the milestone is applied, and let's go ahead and create merge request. So now this is the space in which I can work. As a developer, I can obviously go to my IDE and start working on this branch of code. If I have Visual Studio, IntelliJ, JetBrains, Vim, whichever one. But also, as GitLab, we have something called the Web ID. So imagine a developer who's new to the organization, who's just come on. He needs to get his environment set up, his laptop set up, etc. Of course, we can do that, and he can get connected with all his favorite tools. But if he wants to start quickly and access the code, GitLab is basically providing him a Web ID that works in the same way, that's connected to the source code and has the ability to include extension as well as our chat. So we have everything ready for him. Now, if you remember, well, one of the first things that I had to do was basically change the background color. And I'm going to do some changes. I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to change the size. So let's go and make the size bigger. And so this is addressing one of the requirements. But what I wanted to do, and what I want to do for us, is basically improve or add a bit more code, make it a bit more interactive. So I am adding a new file, and I'm going to say, iteration, just because to name it. And I'm going to say, let's write it in Python. And I'm going to ask it to create a tic-tac, or actually, let's keep it simple, a function that accepts numbers and prints out their product, but also has a security vulnerability. So I'm trying to make it a bit more interactive. I've basically given a prompt to my AI module and said, go ahead and give me a function in Python. It knows that accepts the numbers, but also has some security vulnerabilities. Now you can see over here, the code obviously tells you what the security vulnerability is, but I can go ahead and remove that just so that, let's make it so that it's very, very, very simplistic and that I can, work on this. So let's go ahead and remove all the comments and make it very simplistic. So now I've actually written this piece of code, a function. Now, what else can I do as GitLab? Very simplistically, as if you remember, I told you, writing code is one part, but what developers do not like generally, or that takes them a lot more time, is to write unit tests. How does GitLab help you? We have a function that, or a use case where it will basically go ahead and generate a test. Let me just go ahead and see if we can initialize it again. So I am facing some challenges, but don't worry, we have alternatives over here. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and push these changes to and basically create a commit. So I've gone ahead and created a commit, and then let's see if we can initialize the chat again. We seem to be having a problem in the chat. Not a problem. We're going to continue on with our demo. I have done now a change. Let's go back and see that change in our merge request. If I go back to my merge requests, you will see that I have done those changes. I have committed that code to the repository. It tells me who did the commit and when they did it. And because GitLab is a seamless transition solution, we actually have a pipeline run as part of that process. So as soon as we basically go ahead and commit the code, we have a pipeline that runs that is predefined, and that will do the DevSecOps process. So build the code, test the code, deploy the code to a development environment, validate the code, and give me the results so that the developer gets immediate feedback. This is going to take some time because obviously all the different engines have to run. But let's go back into the main code, main merge request, and showcase to you what are the additional benefits GitLab provides to you. The first part of it is, if you remember, when I was creating the merge request, I had the ability to write a description. But what I'm going to do now is, instead of having to write it manually myself or keep it very simplistically, I'm going to add the code description by clicking a button. It goes, analyzes the changes that I did. So it says that, hey, you added a new function that multiplies it, but also something that updates the start sheet, right? So we've actually been able to write the description very quickly for the developer. Whether you use a change in 1 file or 50 files, you would be able to update those changes. That's the first part of what we did. The other part of what we do is we actually have the ability now that, as a next step, when you write a code as a developer, you will want a review from your team lead. We have the ability to, of course, assign the team lead. So you can go ahead and assign certain users who will come and review it. But we also have our AI engine going and doing a review. How does that review look? So that means that before my team lead comes in, because my team lead is not just waiting only for me to submit the code, he's doing other tasks, I get quick feedback from GitLab saying, what are the things that is done? So you can see over here that I have done a review, and I have a lot of questions such as consistency, security vulnerabilities, coding style, and I'm going to be writing those. So you can see here, the first thing is I did some changes, but it also has context of what is my change about. The merge title request indicates that the background color should be orange, but you changed to blue. This contradicts the stated purpose. So that means not only about syntax, but also about whether it makes sense according to the change that you were supposed to do. So it gives me that one option, one thing that I have to change. Another part of it is that it says that there is a security vulnerability that allows code injection. It's explicitly noted in the comment and should not be implemented this way. So it gives me also a suggestion of how I could go ahead and fix this. And then finally, the same point of it itself, that in case I created the comment in Python, the comment is supposed to be with the hash. So GitLab understands all of these points and basically tells me, hey, I think you need to do a change. Now I can do the following things. I can, of course, accept those, or I can choose to accept the ones I want. So I could just accept one, or I could make it a batch. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add these all to the batch, and I'm going to apply 3 of them and say, as requested by Duo. So that means I'm going to have a new commit that runs way on this. So I can go ahead, and if I refresh the page, you will see the number of commits has changed, and the changes as well are reflected to showcase the reversal back to the color scheme, as well as the new commit that's showcased, as well as that there is a new pipeline that's running. So as soon as you do this, you get constant feedback on exactly how you're doing. Now, as part of this, I do want to showcase what happens. You could obviously have all of this run seamlessly, and I could show you an example where everything worked, but or a pipeline that runs. So if I go ahead and see this pipeline, you can see that certain tasks are running, certain tasks were stopped, but I would have the information that everything is seamlessly working. What I can do is go and find a pipeline that didn't work properly. So an example is this one. That's a week old, but I had a pipeline that ran. It ran a few of those tests, which you can see the information for, but some of it failed. So what can I do? Imagine you're in this space where you need to understand and troubleshoot these logs. You need to be a developer to understand the code that was written. You need to be a DevOps engineer to understand the pipeline, and you need to be an operations person to understand the environment. Luckily, instead of having to wait for all of these 3 people to come together, GitLab has access to this, and we can, at a click of a button, understand exactly where the failure happened and what is a possible solution to fix this. So when you have this sort of assistant who's helping you to make sure that you can continue doing your work, it basically makes the process so that you are not held up waiting for any other human. You have all the information available, and you have certainly the steps that you could possibly take so that you can speed up and you are never stopped at any point in time. So this is another use case that I wanted to show. There is one final part of what I wanted to show, and let's go back to our merge requests. I'm going to show one of the earlier merge requests. And the reason that I'm showing this is because I want the pipeline to be completed, as you can see over here. And as part of the pipeline, if you remember, I spoke about earlier, we have all of these security toolings that we run. Yes, we run them. We get the information from them. And so it's available to the developer, either as an output for the latest run or within his merge request. And when you do that, that it's within his merge request, that means that the developer has immediate feedback on what he needs to work on and what he needs to fix. Now, certain vulnerabilities are going to be straightforward, like, dependency scanning and container scanning. This version is having a problem, upgrade to a newer version. That's straightforward. So if I open for you one of these, you will see it tells you a lot of information, but in the true essence, it tells you what the package that's vulnerable and what do you need to do. So this is straightforward. I would say that it is understandable of exactly what needs to be done. But when you talk about a SaaS vulnerability, something that says, hey, you're doing a mistake in terms of how you're coding, I can tell you the information and the vulnerability, but if I am a junior developer and I don't know how to fix this, what do? I have two options. Either I go research myself, or I would go and call for a security engineer to come and help me. What does GitLab do? We have the ability to basically say resolve with AI, and that will go ahead, understand the code, understand the vulnerability, and then come back to you with the updates done on your piece of code to resolve this issue. So obviously this is going to take just a bit of time, but what I will do is, we're back here. So you can see what has happened just now as part of the vulnerability resolution. GitLab Duo has gone ahead and added this piece of code that will fix this vulnerability, and then basically created a new merge request where you can track that vulnerability and the fix itself. So that means that, the GitLab has gone ahead and done the work for you. You do not need to do the work yourself. It's gone ahead and done the work for you. The final part of this, to close the full story, so I've talked about developers, I talked about operations, team leads, security engineers, is management. In the end, management wants to know, how are we doing? And that is the good part of GitLab. GitLab being the platform that has access to all the work that's being done, has information of your issues, it has information of your merge requests, it has information of when you deployed and how often you're deploying. So that means we can give you the different metrics. So the different metrics that any management would generally look for: merge request, lead time, cycle time, as well as the DORA metrics. This is a very common metric, I'm sure, that everyone within the DevOps industry knows, so that they can actually go ahead and see how they're tracking, and as well as be able to look at that from either a holistic view or by the different groups. So that means that we give you the information for management to take data-driven decisions. Where do I need to invest my resources for the upcoming quarter? Oh, it seems that, we're doing well in terms of lead time for changes, but my deployments frequency is decreasing, and my time to restore service has certainly increased in a negative way. I need to focus on my operational teams, and they need to become better at restoring the service. So that gives you some input, but where is the AI part, you would say, in this? And that's where, in addition to the standard value stream, we actually have something called the AI impact dashboard. And the AI impact dashboard tells you, of your users, how many of them are using the AI capabilities, and how has using the usage of AI capabilities over the last 6 months, how has that improved your metrics? So I can see certainly that my cycle time, my lead time, and my deployment frequency have become better, but my number of vulnerabilities and my change failure rate has worsened. So that means that my developers are more productive, but maybe sometimes they're not looking at the vulnerabilities enough, and I need to focus more on the security. But it gives you an indication of AI, how useful was it, what is the ROI for my organization for using this. So, with this, we've basically showcased a holistic view of how GitLab works. the DevSecOps process, as well as the AI capabilities and how it can impact your organization. I'll return it back to Zainab.
Gautham, thank you so much for the demo and all this information you provided. Eteration Talks, GitLab ile yapay zeka destekli DevOps etkinliğimize katılmanız için tüm katılımcılarımıza çok teşekkür ederiz.